Trace your finger along the map of the Indian Ocean in the year 1698, where monsoon winds twist across the Arabian Sea and where the air smells of rotting oak soaked with salt crystals. Whale oil lantern smoke drifting through crowded anchorages, boiling pine tar bubbling inside black iron cauldrons beside shipyards, and sulfur residue clinging to bronze cannon muzzles still warm from recent broadside exchanges. Somewhere beyond the coast of Madagascar, a pirate frigate drifts beneath a blood-red sunset while canvas sails snap violently against rigging stiffened by tropical humidity. The hull groans under the weight of stolen silver, carved ivory, Persian silk, emerald jewelry, and gold coins packed inside reinforced sea chests banded with iron nearly half an inch thick. Below-deck rats chew through damp rope coils beside barrels of gunpowder composed of 75% saltpeter, 15% charcoal, and 10% sulfur corned into coarse grains to improve combustion efficiency during naval combat, and standing upon the quarterdeck beside a brass-bound compass darkened by fingerprints and sea spray is a pirate captain whose hidden fortune would become the greatest treasure mystery in human history. William Kidd did not begin his career as an outlaw. He began as a respected privateer, operating under official letters of marque issued by the English crown during an age when the line separating patriotism and piracy was thinner than parchment itself. Born around 1654 in Scotland, Kidd emerged into a maritime world dominated by imperial competition where European kingdoms transformed oceans into battlefields for commercial supremacy. Merchant convoys carried unimaginable wealth across routes stretching from London to Surat, while naval architects experimented constantly with hull geometry, tumble-home angles, and reinforced futtock assemblies designed to survive Atlantic storms and artillery impacts. Kidd's vessel, Adventure Galley, represented one of the most advanced hybrid warships of its era. Launched in 1695 at a cost exceeding 8,000 pounds, the ship measured approximately 124 feet in length with a burden near 287 tons and carried 34 guns, ranging from small swivel pieces to heavy culverins capable of firing iron shot weighing 12 pounds. Unlike traditional sailing frigates, Adventure Galley incorporated both square-rigged masts and massive banks of oars, allowing propulsion during calm winds or tactical maneuvering against hostile currents. The hull consisted primarily of English oak strengthened through internal ribbing connected by curved futtocks bolted directly into the keel using hand-forged iron spikes. Shipwright sealed seams with oakum hammered between planks before coating the exterior with heated pine tar and animal fat mixtures to resist shipworm infestation during tropical voyages. Yet, despite the sophistication of his ship, Kidd operated within a brutally unstable political environment. Privateering licenses granted legal authority to attack enemy commerce, but international diplomacy shifted constantly. A captain celebrated as patriot one season could become hunted criminal the next if treaties changed or influential investors demanded scapegoats. Kidd sailed initially with instructions to hunt French shipping and suppress piracy near the Indian Ocean, but months of poor fortune, unpaid crew wages, disease outbreaks, and growing desperation transformed discipline aboard Adventure Galley into something increasingly dangerous. Tropical heat rotted provisions rapidly despite heavy salting procedures. Fresh water stored inside oak casks developed algae films and bacterial contamination, producing dysentery severe enough to kill sailors through dehydration within days. Scurvy blackened gums and loosened teeth while monsoon storms snapped spars and tore canvas into ribbons. Men sleeping inside cramped lower decks endured suffocating humidity mixed with billwater fumes, vomit, sweat, and smoke drifting from cooking fires. Under such conditions, mutiny hovered constantly beneath the surface. Kidd responded through escalating severity. Crewmen accused of disobedience faced whipping with cat-o'-nine-tails, whose knotted cords sliced skin into bleeding strips after repeated strikes. One gunner named William Moore reportedly challenged Kidd openly during dispute over attacking a Dutch vessel. In response, Kidd seized an iron-bound bucket weighing nearly 30 pounds and smashed it across Moore's skull with enough force to fracture bone and rupture brain tissue. Moore died the following day, while blood seeped between deck planks into the bilge below. The murder terrified the crew into obedience temporarily, but it also marked the moment Kidd crossed irreversibly toward outlaw status. And somewhere within the chaos of betrayal, violence, and collapsing legality, an unimaginable treasure began accumulating beneath his decks. Picture the Indian Ocean trade routes at the end of the 17th century, where merchant fleets moved through waters carrying more concentrated wealth than perhaps any shipping lanes on Earth. Mughal treasure ships departed Surat loaded with gold mohurs, silver rupees, carved jade, diamonds from Golconda, Yemeni coffee, Chinese porcelain, and silk embroidered with gold thread. Armenian merchants transported gemstones inside velvet pouches sewn secretly into clothing, while Persian traders carried ivory tusks, ambergris, musk, and lacquered chests filled with spices worth fortunes in European markets. Every vessel crossing these waters represented floating wealth, measured not merely in coin, but in imperial power itself. Kidd's transformation from licensed privateer into pirate accelerated during these voyages because his investors expected profit while his exhausted crew demanded immediate plunder. Adventure Galley itself deteriorated rapidly under tropical conditions. Shipworms bored through submerged planking despite protective tar coatings, while iron fastenings corroded from salt exposure. Careening operations became necessary almost constantly. During careening, the vessel was intentionally tilted sideways near isolated beaches so sailors could scrape barnacles and marine growth from the hull using iron blades and heated pitch tools. These operations exposed the ship vulnerable to attack, while forcing men to labor beneath brutal heat, capable of causing hallucinations and heat stroke. Yet Kidd pressed onward deeper into the Indian Ocean, hunting valuable targets. In January 1698, he intercepted the Quedagh Merchant, an enormous Armenian-owned vessel sailing under French passes though commanded by English officers. The ship displaced approximately 400 tons and carried cargo of staggering value including silk bales, sugar, opium, gold dust, silver bars, satin cloth, and jewels destined for Mughal markets. Contemporary estimates valued the cargo near £70,000 at the time, equivalent to billions in modern purchasing power, depending upon calculation methods involving precious metals and economic conversion. Capturing the vessel required not merely aggression, but extraordinary tactical calculation. Kidd approached under deceptive colors while positioning Adventure Galley to exploit wind direction and broadside angle. Cannons aboard both ships represented masterpieces of early modern metallurgy. Bronze naval guns contained copper-tin alloys carefully balanced to prevent brittleness while maintaining resistance against thermal expansion during repeated firing cycles. Gun crews loaded these weapons through procedures drilled endlessly into muscle memory. First, the worm tool cleared smoldering debris from the bore. Then, powder cartridges wrapped in canvas were rammed home behind felt wadding and solid iron shot. Upon ignition, sulfur and charcoal combusted violently while saltpeter supplied oxygen, accelerating gas expansion inside the confined barrel. The resulting pressure wave launched cannonballs capable of smashing through oak hull planking nearly 2 feet thick. Impact generated catastrophic secondary fragmentation as wooden fibers exploded inward like shrapnel, shredding muscle tissue and pulverizing bone. But Kidd preferred intimidation over prolonged combat because damaged cargo reduced profits. The Quedagh Merchant surrendered after limited resistance, and what Kidd's crew discovered inside transformed the voyage into legend. Cargo holds overflowed with treasure beyond anything most sailors had imagined possible. There were gold coins stamped with Mughal inscriptions, carved gemstones wrapped in silk cloth, silver ingots stacked like masonry blocks, sandalwood chests reinforced by brass fittings, and exotic textiles whose dyes originated from crushed insects and rare mineral compounds. The smell below deck became overwhelming, a mixture of spice, damp wood, sweat, gunpowder residue, and perfume oils leaking from shattered containers during transfer operations. Yet this victory also sealed Kidd's doom. Political pressure from the British East India Company exploded immediately because powerful merchants feared Mughal retaliation against English trade interests. Suddenly, Kidd was no longer useful. He became expendable. News spread rapidly through colonial ports that the Crown intended to prosecute him for piracy regardless of his privateering commission. And somewhere during the desperate months that followed, Kidd allegedly concealed part of his unimaginable fortune in secret locations that would haunt treasure hunters for centuries. Trace your finger along the jagged coastline of Madagascar, where pirate anchorages hid inside coves, shielded by coral reefs, sharp enough to tear open hull planking beneath the waterline. Here ships anchored beneath forests alive with insects, while sailors repaired rigging using hemp cordage coated in animal tallow and pine resin. Kidd's crew increasingly understood that their captain stood trapped between empires. Returning openly to England risked arrest. Remaining indefinitely in the Indian Ocean invited mutiny, starvation, or interception by naval patrols. Adventure Galley itself had become nearly unseaworthy. The hull leaked continuously despite constant pumping, while worm damage weakened structural beams supporting the gun deck. Sailcloth shredded under monsoon winds, and powder stores absorbed moisture, reducing ballistic reliability during combat. Kidd therefore transferred much of his treasure onto captured vessels while attempting to negotiate political survival. Yet treasure creates paranoia faster than gold creates wealth. Crewmen whispered constantly regarding hidden shares, missing jewels, and secret compartments inside the captain's quarters. Pirate articles of agreement traditionally specified exact distribution percentages for plunder, including compensation for amputated limbs or blindness suffered during battle. But Kidd's situation operated outside ordinary pirate democracy because legal uncertainty overshadowed every decision. Some sailors believed surrendering treasure might secure pardons. Others preferred vanishing into Madagascar's pirate settlements, where merchants exchanged stolen goods for slaves, alcohol, firearms, and supplies. Kidd himself understood that treasure of such magnitude represented both salvation and death sentence simultaneously. Historical accounts suggest he concealed portions of his wealth strategically before attempting return to the American colonies. The most famous burial allegedly occurred on Gardiner's Island near Long Island in 1699. Picture the scene beneath moonlight as exhausted sailors row heavy chests ashore through cold Atlantic surf. Iron bands creak under the weight of silver coins packed tightly enough that entire containers required multiple men to lift. Damp sand collapses beneath boots, while shovels bite into coastal earth mixed with roots and stone. Kidd reportedly buried gold dust, silver bars, jewels, and exotic fabrics beneath carefully selected ground while swearing local witnesses to secrecy. The treasure itself reflected global commerce spanning entire continents. Diamonds mined in India rested beside Arabian incense. African ivory carvings, Venetian pistols, and Chinese silk transported thousands of miles through interconnected trade systems dependent upon violence at every stage. Some chests may have contained raw gemstones still uncut, their surfaces dull beneath lantern light until polished properly by European jewelers. Others held silver Spanish pieces of 8, whose milled edges prevented clipping fraud common in earlier hammered coinage. Moisture from sea air tarnished exposed metal rapidly, producing green oxidation on copper alloys and black sulfide layers upon silver surfaces. Kidd hoped hidden wealth might later purchase legal defense or political favor. Instead, it became evidence against him. Colonial authorities seized portions of the buried treasure after Kidd attempted negotiation with Governor Bellamont in Boston. Yet rumors persisted that only a fraction had ever been recovered. Treasure hunters across centuries would later excavate coastlines, islands, caves, and forests, searching for the missing billions supposedly hidden by Kidd before capture. Some theories claimed he concealed caches throughout the Caribbean using coded markers carved into stone. Others insisted entire shiploads vanished near Madagascar or the Bahamas. Regardless of the truth, the legend expanded because the scale of Kidd's captured fortunes seemed almost mythological. Contemporary observers struggled even calculating the total value due to the diversity of goods involved. Unlike simple coin hoards, Kidd's treasure included luxury textiles, gemstones, spices, precious metals, and commercial cargo tied directly to global imperial economies. And as authorities closed around him, the man who once sailed proudly beneath legal commission became consumed by the impossible burden of wealth too enormous to spend safely. Picture Boston Harbor in July 1699, where gulls circle above crowded wharves lined with warehouses smelling of molasses, fish oil, damp rope, and horse manure. Kidd arrives not as triumphant privateer, but as hunted man attempting desperate negotiation. His remaining ships appear weathered almost to collapse. Hull planking warped by tropical heat leaks steadily, while rigging hangs patched together through emergency repairs conducted using mismatched cordage and salvaged spars. Sailors unloading cargo glance constantly toward armed patrols moving along the docks. Kidd still believes powerful political connections might save him. After all, influential nobles had financed his original expedition, including men tied directly to Parliament and the Crown. But political survival in the late 17th century depended upon sacrifice, and Kidd, carrying the scandal of the Quettigat merchant, offered authorities an ideal scapegoat. The East India Company demanded punishment because Mughal officials threatened retaliation against English commerce in India after hearing reports of pirate attacks upon protected shipping. Insurance markets destabilized. Merchant investors panicked. Suddenly, Kidd's former patrons distanced themselves publicly from the expedition they had once endorsed enthusiastically. During interrogation, Kidd insisted repeatedly that the Quettigat merchant sailed legally under French protection and therefore qualified as lawful prize under his letters of marque. Technically, his argument possessed merit. But politics rarely followed technicalities when billions in trade relationships stood endangered. Authorities seized buried treasure from Gardiner's Island as physical evidence, while witnesses testified regarding violence aboard Adventure Galley. Every detail reinforced the image of Kidd, not as misunderstood privateer, but as dangerous pirate consumed by greed. Meanwhile, treasure legends multiplied among sailors and dock workers. Stories circulated of hidden sea chests lined with velvet and packed with diamonds large as walnuts. Others described golden idols stolen from Asian temples or secret maps marked with coded symbols indicating burial locations across remote islands. The psychology surrounding treasure itself deserves careful examination because early modern wealth operated differently from modern banking systems. Gold and silver existed physically, heavy enough to break weak flooring if stored improperly. A single chest filled with silver coin might weigh over 300 pounds, requiring reinforced lifting tackle for transport aboard rolling ships. Moisture exposure corroded metal surfaces while wooden containers expanded and contracted under temperature shifts, loosening iron nails and brass fittings over time. Protecting treasure therefore required constant maintenance and concealment. Pirates frequently waterproofed containers using waxed cloth, tar sealants, and layered leather wrapping before burial. Yet even expertly hidden caches remained vulnerable to flooding, soil acidity, thieves, and simple memory failure. Kidd himself reportedly trusted very few people regarding hidden assets because betrayal had already destroyed his career. By 1701, he stood trial in London before crowds fascinated by stories of buried fortunes and Indian Ocean piracy. Court proceedings focused heavily upon the murder of William Moore and accusations surrounding unlawful seizure of the Quedagh merchant. Kidd defended himself aggressively, insisting missing documentation and political manipulation had twisted events unfairly. Yet the outcome was predetermined. England required visible punishment, demonstrating commitment against piracy, to protect global trade networks worth fortunes in customs revenue and imperial taxation. On May 23, 1701, Kidd was executed at Execution Dock along the River Thames. The hanging itself reportedly malfunctioned when the rope snapped during the first attempt, forcing authorities to repeat the execution before spectators packed densely along the waterfront. His body was later coated in tar and suspended inside an iron gibbet near Tilbury Point, where tides, rain, and seabirds slowly stripped flesh from bone over years as warning to other pirates. But death did not destroy the legend. If anything, it intensified obsession surrounding the missing treasure, because somewhere beyond the officially recovered wealth remained unanswered questions. Had Kidd truly hidden only one cache? Or had billions vanished permanently into caves, islands, and coastlines scattered across oceans he once sailed? Trace your finger across centuries of treasure hunters digging through remote beaches, beneath moonlight while metal detectors whine above mineral-rich soil and divers descend into black water searching for wreckage. William Kidd's buried fortune became one of history's most enduring obsessions because the scale of the rumored wealth transcended ordinary piracy. Newspapers in colonial America exaggerated constantly, describing mountains of gold and jewels hidden beneath cursed islands guarded by traps or coded maps. By the 19th century, Kidd's legend had fused with Gothic folklore. Sailors claimed ghostly lanterns appeared near suspected treasure sites, while skeletons chained beside sea chests supposedly guarded hidden entrances. Yet beneath the mythology remained very real economics. The Quedagh merchant's cargo alone represented commercial value capable of influencing international diplomacy between empires. Mughal authorities demanded compensation for losses, while English officials feared catastrophic disruption of Asian trade routes producing silk, tea, spices, and textiles essential to European markets. Treasure hunters therefore pursued Kidd's caches, not merely because of greed, but because historical evidence suggested enormous unrecovered assets genuinely existed. Expeditions targeted Gardiner's Island repeatedly despite official claims all buried goods had been recovered. Others searched Nova Scotia, Block Island, Madagascar, and Caribbean anchorages once associated with pirate activity. Excavation methods evolved dramatically over centuries. Early treasure seekers relied upon crude digging, witness testimony, and folklore. Modern expeditions employ ground-penetrating radar, magnetometers capable of detecting buried metal anomalies, underwater sonar mapping, and sediment analysis identifying disturbed soil layers consistent with historical burial activity. Marine archaeologists studying pirate wrecks examine corrosion patterns upon iron artifacts, wood preservation rates under anaerobic seabed conditions, and ballast distribution revealing modifications associated with smuggling compartments. Even cannon remnants provide clues because artillery serial markings can identify specific ships and manufacturing origins. Yet, despite centuries of searching, Kidd's full fortune has never been conclusively located. Some discoveries fueled further obsession. In 2007, divers near the Dominican Republic recovered a cannon believed linked to Kidd's vessel Quedagh Merchant, later preserved through chemical desalination procedures, preventing rapid deterioration once exposed to air. Other expeditions uncovered isolated coins, fragments of jewelry, and trade goods connected indirectly to pirate commerce networks. But the legendary central cache remains elusive. Historians debate whether the billions narrative exaggerates reality through centuries of inflation and myth-making. Yet even conservative estimates place Kidd's captured wealth among the largest pirate fortunes ever assembled. More importantly, the symbolism of buried treasure itself reflects deeper truths about piracy and empire. Wealth extracted violently from global trade routes often vanished into secrecy because legal ownership remained unstable. Privateers became pirates through political convenience. Merchants financed expeditions publicly while denying involvement privately. Colonial governors negotiated with criminals when profitable and executed them when necessary. Kidd embodied these contradictions perfectly. He sailed initially as licensed protector of commerce, carrying official commissions endorsed by powerful elites. He died condemned as criminal, while many of the men benefiting financially from his expedition escaped accountability entirely. And beneath every version of the legend remains the image of hidden chests buried beneath cold earth while waves crash endlessly nearby. Iron locks rust slowly. Silver tarnishes black beneath centuries of moisture. Leather bindings decay into dust. But somewhere, perhaps still hidden beneath forests, caves, or submerged wreckage, lies treasure once touched by William Kidd himself, wealth so vast that generations have spent lifetimes chasing its shadow. Picture the Atlantic at night beneath clouds so dark the sea itself disappears except for pale streaks of moonlight breaking across violent waves. Hear the groaning of oak hulls straining against storm pressure while ropes creak through wooden pulleys slick with rain and salt. Smell the mixture of sulfur smoke, wet canvas, bilge water, and pine tar drifting across the deck of a pirate ship carrying enough treasure to alter the fate of nations. William Kidd's story survived not merely because of gold or buried chests, but because it revealed how fragile the boundary between lawful empire and criminal piracy truly was during the Great Age of Sail. His ships represented floating machines of extraordinary complexity. Their footocks and keelsons formed skeletons engineered to survive hurricanes capable of snapping masts like kindling. Their cannons, cast from bronze alloys balanced carefully between copper and tin content, unleashed kinetic force sufficient to tear human bodies apart through splinter storms generated inside shattered hulls. Their sailors navigated oceans using dead reckoning, celestial observation, and instinct forged through years beneath merciless weather. Yet, despite all this sophistication, entire empires still depended ultimately upon violence and hidden wealth buried beneath unstable political alliances. Kidd's treasure became legendary precisely because nobody could ever fully separate fact from rumor. Officially recovered caches accounted for only fragments compared to stories whispered across centuries. Some believed he concealed additional fortunes before reaching Boston. Others argued corrupt officials secretly stole portions during confiscation and suppressed records afterward. Treasure hunters, historians, archaeologists, and dreamers continued searching because the possibility remained intoxicating. Somewhere beneath layers of soil or ocean sediment might rest untouched sea chests filled with Mughal gold, silver bars stamped with foreign empires, gemstones wrapped in decayed silk, and relics of a world connected through trade routes drenched in blood and salt water. Kidd himself likely never imagined the scale of mythology his hidden fortune would inspire. He died publicly disgraced, body suspended in chains beside the Thames as warning against piracy. Yet centuries later, his name still conjures visions of buried riches beyond imagination because treasure legends speak to something primal inside human psychology. The idea that unimaginable wealth lies hidden just beyond reach beneath forgotten islands or storm-lashed coastlines refuses to die. And perhaps somewhere beneath the crashing surf or tangled roots of some isolated shore, iron-bound chests still wait in darkness exactly where frightened sailors buried them under William Kidd's orders more than 300 years ago.